Greetings, salutations, and welcome to SportsLook, the sports television program for the high plains of West Texas and eastern New Mexico. I'm your host, Doc Elder, and we have no madness here in March at Eastern New Mexico University. Instead, we have gladness as both of our basketball teams have qualified for the Lone Star Conference postseason tournament. More will be said about that by one of our guests, Trey Sigler, the head coach of Greyhound men's basketball. We're also going to have Aubrey Orr, who's the graduate assistant for Greyhound softball. Brooklyn and Dylan will do a high school spotlight. I'll finish up with an overtime, but as always, I'll start out with an Eastern recap. Two tough losses for Greyhound women's basketball. They lose by 3 to Angelo State in regulation. They lose by 5 in overtime to Kingsville, but they still qualify for the postseason nonetheless. Really good start to the spring season for Greyhound women's rodeos. They finished second at the rodeo in Odessa. And for the Greyhound men's track team, they finished 5th in the Lone Star Conference indoor meet. The Greyhound women finished 4th. We had 2 first-place finishes from Greyhound guys. We had 1 first-place finish from a Greyhound lady. Well, that has been your Eastern recap, so we'll clear the set and we'll bring in our first guest right now. Welcome back to SportsLook, and we bring to the set for the very first time the graduate assistant for Greyhound softball, Aubrey Orr. Aubrey, welcome to SportsLook.
Hi, thank you.
Well, Aubrey, you are a New Mexican, but you're actually from the opposite part of the state.
Definitely the cold north.
And originally from Gallup, New Mexico, and from what I just learned a couple of minutes ago, you kind of went to school a little bit far away from the state of New Mexico.
Definitely super far.
Went to school in New Jersey?
Yeah, it was about 15 miles out of New York City, but up in northern Jersey, crazy. Huge cities, cars. It was never quiet. There was cars constantly on the streets. There was people walking up and down. It was never dead.
Well, Aubrey, I've got to ask you the obvious question. What got a girl from Gallup, New Mexico to New Jersey?
It was the opportunity to play softball. I got to play 4 more years and get an education in something that I was really interested in, which was psychology. And actually, the team had graduated 9 girls my senior year of high school, so I knew that if I went and I worked hard, I had a great chance of continuing to play for 4 years and starting. So that's really what pulled me, and being from Gallup, you know, New York City, who would have thought? So
exactly.
It kind of pulled me.
So what position did you play?
I was a utility player. In the 4 years I played everything but pitcher and catcher.
Wow, that is the definition of a utility player.
Yeah, it was interesting. I never knew where I was going to play when I woke up, but I knew that working hard I was going to play. So, but it was cool. Always kept me on my toes. Always kept me busy.
Did you play primarily because of your glove, or were you an offensive player?
My favorite is defense. So I love to play defense. I love to make that great play, that diving stop, that crazy throw. But when I went to college, I actually gained a love for offense. I slapped all throughout high school from the left side. And when I got to college, I actually had a coach who could teach me how to swing from the left side and gave me the confidence. So it was kind of both. I worked harder to be a better offensive player, but I still love to play defense.
Excellent. Did you always know you wanted to be a coach, or was this something you kind of came to as your college career was progressing?
I had known when I was little that at some point I wanted to coach, but I didn't know how soon I wanted to coach. I actually thought it was going to be a lot harder because I loved playing the game so much. So when it got down towards the end, it was a little iffy. I didn't know if I could do it right away or not because I didn't know if I was going to miss playing and how, miserable in a sense I would be. But when it came down to it, it gave me another opportunity to get another degree and to be around the sport that I love every day because I couldn't imagine not being around it anymore.
And for people that don't know, that's what a graduate assistant does. You are an assistant coach, but you're also working on a graduate degree.
Yeah, I'm actually getting my master's also, which is interesting.
Getting it in psychology?
I'm actually getting it in sports administration. I want to continue after and get my PhD in sports psych. So I'm kind of in the middle of both.
Well, my older son went to school here and got his master's in sports administration, so elder family.
I actually enjoy it. I love sports in general, any sport, so it's nice to be interested in every class that I take instead of having a class where you're like, but it's interesting and I enjoy it.
So Aubrey, what was the process that got you, we found out how you got from New Mexico to New Jersey. What got you from New Jersey to Portales, New Mexico?
I did the long distance. I was ready for something close, and growing up in New Mexico, I wanted to be able to give back to the state that I grew up playing in, and I knew coaching was my best bet.
How did you reach out to Coach Welburn? Did Coach Welburn reach out to you, or was there a go-between?
Actually had heard that the job was open from word of mouth. I had a couple of the coaches in my conference out on the East Coast helping me look for GA jobs, and one of them had heard about this. So I had reached out to her in the first place, but she had an idea that I was going to call her, so it was kind of a little bit of both.
And what was the selling point? How did you sell yourself to Coach Welburn? How did Coach Welburn sell herself to you?
She talked a lot about the program, and you know, she was super excited and into it. From the minute she called me, she was detailed and so, you know, passionate about what she wanted to do and how she wanted her program to be, and that was something that really sold me. I think just showing how much I love the game and my expression for it and what I was doing and what I had accomplished in college and in high school, that I kind of sold her myself to be her GA.
And what are your duties? What do you actually do in practice? What do you do in games?
I help with the outfield mostly. I run the outfield there, my little group. So I run them, and I help with the slap hitters because that's kind of what I did in college. So we don't really we have 3 of them, so I've been working with them. They're all a little different. Some of them have more power than others, so I work with them a lot.
And for people that have never, I mean, shame on them if they've never come out and watched us play, but for people that have not a familiarity with softball, instead of taking a full swing, you essentially, sometimes you
literally run and throw your hands at it.
Yep. So we would
it's an advantage.
Yeah, we would encourage people to come out and watch and see that strategy in action. And from what I understand, you're going to be in action tomorrow with the weekend series.
Yes, we're actually playing Midwestern, which is a huge series for us. We could use the wins. We need the wins. And, you know, taking the series would be something incredible, especially after a tough weekend that we just had. So Midwestern will be huge for us this weekend.
You started out the Lone Star Conference season with 3 games against Western New Mexico. You got all 3, and the last game in particular was rather dramatic.
Oh yeah, it was a series for the books, that's for sure. It had you on your toes. It had you, you know, thrilled and so many emotions. So it was cool, and it was great to see the girls bringing that fight back and, you know, come together and push through. It was a good series win. We needed it.
Last weekend, kind of a bittersweet moment for Katie Welburn. She's the head coach for Eastern, but she used to play for the team.
Oh yeah, that was her alma mater, and she, you know, she pushed us and told the girls, you know, let's get these wins. It's huge for us, and it's, you know, showing off my team to what I used to play for. So it was tough. It was tough to lose, especially there, and you know, with her past there. So we're hoping to come back this weekend against Midwestern.
In what way were the 3 games the same? In which way were the games a little bit different?
We needed to swing the bat more. That's what it was. We were aggressive against Western, I would say, and against Tarleton we weren't as aggressive, and we needed to be. We were watching great pitches and not swinging at good ones, so it was rough. But, you know, they say defense wins championships, but you can't get on the board if you don't hit. So we're hoping to be a lot more aggressive this weekend. That's actually the key.
One big change for Eastern softball from last year to this year is the fact that when it got dark last year, we had to pretty much call the game, but we got lights now.
Yeah, and the lights, they're incredible. It's so nice to have late practices or early morning practices and have the lights. And even on our field, which the girls had mentioned in Tarleton, there was a shadow under the ball. And at our field, there's some type of thing on the lights that takes away the shadow and doesn't give it that glare, so it's a lot easier to see. So it's incredible. I always love playing under the lights, so it's nice to have that feeling.
Aubrey, going into the season, what did you think was going to be the strong point of Eastern softball, and has that turned out to be the case?
From what I had heard, we didn't really have the pitching the last couple years, and this year we have some incredible pitchers. You know, they're in there day in and day out, throwing spins, throwing live. They work really hard, and we have the pitching. We really do, and our defense is great. So, and the bond that the girls share is something that is great for a team. You know, they're really close and they love each other, and it's nice to know that, you know, they have that kind of form.
Well, Aubrey will remind people tomorrow, come out to the Greyhound softball field, and what time is game time tomorrow?
I believe we start at 5 and the second game is at 7. We have a doubleheader.
Excellent. And then one game on Saturday.
Yes, and Saturday is actually Children's Day, so we're going to have a local team walk out with our girls.
Excellent. Well, Aubrey, welcome to Eastern New Mexico University.
Thank you.
And I hope your couple of years here are successful ones.
I'm excited.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap up our first interview segment. So what we'll do is we'll clear the set and we'll cue up High School Spotlight right now.
Welcome back to High School Spotlight. I'm Brooklyn Beal.
And I'm Dylan Knox. This past Friday, we traveled down to Portales High School as the Rams took on the Pintos in a Class 4A District 4 championship game.
Let's go ahead and see how the game turned out. We're going to start off the game with a tip-off, and Lindsay Blakely wins it and tips the ball to Taylor Ripley, who puts in for the short jumper. On this next play, it only takes the Rams one pass before Sarah Lovato drowns the long three. Portales now with some full court action as they get the rebound, and Cox goes coast to coast for the layup. Moriarty now with the ball as they break through Ram pressure, and the long bounce pass to Emerald Russell, who makes the layup and gets to go to the line for one. Alexis Garcia handling the ball for the Rams. She takes the ball all the way inside and shoots the layup with 3 defenders on her for a Ram bucket. Garcia with the ball as she goes up for the jumper and gets blocked by Russell. With a long outlet pass and one more quick pass, the Pintos get 2 points on the board. At the start of the second quarter, Portales leads by a score of 14-9. Another little exchange between Cody Flores and Fraze. This time Flores puts up the 3 and makes it in for the Rams. Hope Bennett receives the pass out on the 3-point line and dribbles inside for the easy bank shot. The Pintos make it through the Portales pressure with ease as they pass the ball quickly down the court and make the layup before the Rams are even able to get back down the court. At the end of the first half, Portales is up 25-16.
Kicking off my section of the highlights, the Pintos get the ball to Ordonez in the corner, who drills a 3. Next highlight, Lovato is able to get the steal and bring the ball up before handing it to Kelly Fraze. Fraze then looks over the defense before giving the ball back to Lovato, who gets it inside to Rippey, who makes a low post move for the bucket. Now the Pintos with the ball as Adam drives in and throws a beautiful one-handed pass inside to Russell, who gets the lay-in. The Pintos moving the ball around on this play as Edwards passes to Russell at the top of the key, who shoots over the defender for a deep 2. The Rams taking over now as Cox has the ball, as her and Blakey execute the pick and roll perfectly, leading to an easy layup for Blakey. Cox again bringing the ball down as she puts a spin move on one defender, freeing herself up, and then gets the left-handed floater to go off the glass. The Pintos now trying to break the Portales press as they're able to swing the ball around before Edwards throws the ball inside to Wilson, who makes the layup. Portales was up 10 going into the fourth. Portales with the ball as Fraze passes to Madison Blakey, who gets it inside to Cox, who threads the needle to Lindsay Blakey for 2. The Rams still in their press as Rippey is able to get the steal as she jump stops and pump fakes before going up for the lay-in. Cox with the ball now as she does her Tom Brady impression, delivering the pass right into the hands of her receiver, Lovato, who kisses the shot off the glass for 2, as the Rams go on to beat the Pintos 53-38 for the Class 4A District 4 championship. And now for our Prep Boys brackets. In Class 1A, the Melrose Buffs have the 1 seed, and they'll take on the 16-seeded Santa Fe Waldorf. And the 8-seeded Vaughn will take on the 9-seeded Grady.
In Class 2A, the number 8 seed, Gateway Christian, will take on the number 9 seed, Dora. And the 7th seed, Tatum, will take on the number 10 seed, Escalante.
In Class 3A, the 1-seeded Texaco will take on the 16-seeded Monte del Sol, and the number 4 seed, Santa Rosa, will take on the number 13 seed, Tucumcari.
And in Class 4A, the number 15 seed, Socorro, will take on the number 2 seed, Silver. And the number 6 seed, Portales, will take on the number 11 seed, Navajo Prep.
In Class 5A, the 5-seeded Artesia Bulldogs will take on the 12-seeded Lovington Wildcats. The number 15-seeded Goddard will take on the 2-seeded Las Lunas Tigers.
In Class 6A, the number 7-seeded Hobbs will take on the number 10 seed, La Cueva. And the number 15 seed, Sandia, will take on the number 2 seed, Las Cruces. Now it's time for your Prep Girls playoff brackets. In Class 1A, the number 1 seed Elida will take on the number 16 seed Reserve, and the number 15 seed Wallatoa Charter will take on the number 2 seed Melrose.
In Class 2A, the 1-seeded Logan will take on the number 16 Navajo Pine, and the 8-seeded Tatum will take on the 9-seeded Dora.
In Class 3A, the number 1-seeded Texaco will take on the number 16-seed Santa Rosa, and the number 3-seed Eunice will take on the 14-seed Newcomb.
In Class 4A, the Portales Rams get the 1 seed and they'll take on the 16-seed Bosque, and the 15-seeded Taos Tigers will take on the 2-seeded Robertson Cardinals.
And in Class 4A, the 4-seed St. Pius will take on the 13th-seed Roswell, and the 6th-seed Goddard will take on the 11th-seed Mayamara.
In Class 6A, in the 1-seeded Cibola, and they will take on the 16-seeded Cleveland, and the 15-seeded Artrisco Heritage will take on the 2-seeded Hobbs.
Thanks for tuning in to another segment of High School Spotlight.
But before we send it back over to Doc, please be sure to like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more photos, updates, and highlights.
I'm Brooklyn Beal.
And I'm Dylan Knox.
And we'll see you next week.
Welcome back to SportsLook. Thanks to Brooklyn and Dylan for that high school spotlight. And now we bring to the set the head coach of Greyhound men's basketball, Trey Segler. And Coach, it's amazing how much brighter the scene is for Greyhound basketball at the end of this year as opposed to last year.
Yes, sir. I always enjoy seeing you. Seeing you last year after the end of the year was kind of one of those, what am I going to tell them now? What am I going to say? Very, very excited for this time of year. One of the things I told my guys in the middle of February was the teams that can chop wood in February will have a bonfire and they can heat their house in March. And so that's kind of been our statement and our saying that we've kind of lived by. And then I asked, I was like, has anybody chopped wood? And only one guy was like, oh, okay, so they haven't chopped wood. So LaMarcus was the guy that had chopped wood. And I said, okay, LaMarcus, how hard is it? And he was like, Coach, it's really hard. And I said, okay, there we go. So you understand the saying, but we're gonna have to do some hard work. So the hard work's been put in. I think we punched our ticket like we wanted to, and now it's time to, kind of get past that part of it and get into this tournament and push our weight around a little bit.
Coach, it was an amazing season of peaks and valleys. I mean, I look back at your game where you beat Texas A&M Commerce, and then you lose to Western, and then you have to win a game on the road, and you almost beat Angelo, and then you have to beat Kingsville, and by gosh, you guys rose to the occasion. Yes,
sir, and I think that statement is it, Doc, and you've mentioned that. Those are your words, not mine, and I think that's been what this team has been about. Sometimes I wish they would rise a little faster so we wouldn't have to worry about it quite as much, but no, it has, and we've, I've learned as a young head coach, there's been some breaks here or there where I wish I would have done this and I wish I would have done that. And so as a young head coach, I'm trying to be as humble as possible and really step back and get bird's eye view to learn some lessons from these things. And obviously, as I'm doing that, I'm trying to ask my players to do the same thing. What are you, deficient at right now? One of the things we've tried to do is to continue to evolve as the season's gone on. And we're hoping that some of these other teams are kind of settling down into what they like to do. And if we can keep pushing the curve and pushing the envelope, the hope is that maybe some people can't keep up. And so, that's been obviously a main line for us. And hopefully, Doc, when we get down this tournament, you see that, maybe a refreshed team, when everyone kind of looks a little bit tired, hopefully we can be a little more refreshed.
You can be totally honest now that the regular season is over. Did you have any doubt when you started out conference play 0-4, or did you still believe that there was the potential to go to the tournament?
Man, that's a great question, Doc. Really, and to answer that completely honestly, I'm pretty eternally optimistic, and my wife and I balance each other out on that stuff. My wife is not pessimistic, but my wife is more realistic. And one of the things she said when that happened was, this more or less happened last year, and when it woke your guys up and they woke up to how hard they were going to have to play, we saw the best come out of them down the important part of the season down the stretch. And so, man, obviously good to have a coach at home, with my wife. And so, but Catherine's words really hit home to me. And so I don't think I was as much in a panic or in a doubt at that point. I can't speak for the guys because I'm sure especially some of the seniors were like, here we go again, But again, resolve has been something we've tried to preach all year, and they've had a lot of it, and they kind of dug their heels in and decided to get better. And so I got to find the magic pill to make that happen before we got to lose games. You know what I mean? So, but yes, sir, very, very much the belief was still there, and hopefully, I think, again, credit to my wife. I think she, kind of raised the flag up, and we all kind of followed.
The thing that encouraged me the most was, with the exception of the WT game at WT, you guys were in every game. I mean, you might not have won every game, but you were in every game. And it was like, when they start to make the play down the stretch, they're going to be fine. And that was the case. You started to win close games.
Yes, sir. Yeah, they started to click, and that started to fall our way. No, you're right. We went through a tough stretch there, lost some games in a row. And I call Grant McCaslin, who was, hired me at Midwestern, was one of my biggest mentors, one of my best friends, and just a real honest guy. And he's over at North Texas, and they had lost a couple in a row, and they were in the same kind of slump. And I was like, what do you do? I was like, how do you stay positive? I was like, here I am, Johnny Positive, and I'm kind of down a little bit. What do you do? And he said, man, you have two choices. He says, you can go to practice today and try to beat the team you're about to play. And he says, or you can make your kids better at what they're bad at. And he's like, and that's kind of, again, not to be biblical, but almost the reap and sow metaphor of just, if you can go to what really matters over the course of time, our patience is never like it should be, but in good patience, that'll blossom into something more important. And so we did that. We quit putting so much focus on this next game being the only thing in our world, and we just got down to being fundamentally better. And I think you see that now as we have a fundamentally more sound basketball team. So obviously, I called them back the next day and was like, good idea. Thank you, brother. But I think they're going to do the same thing in their program too, trying to build something, trying to make something really special happen. And man, you have to have a firm base.
Coach, it was amazing. The last 3 minutes of the regular season were like 3 hours because it was twists and turns. You had Jamani Pierce, who hadn't scored a single point in the game, hit 2 3-pointers, and then they had a kid named Derek Bird that scored 8 points, and you find yourself down 2, but L.A. Thompson comes up and makes a huge play for you.
Huge, and both those guys. And, looking back on the film and watching it again, and obviously kind of being able to an analysis and all that stuff in the post, you get to see some things that are special. The unselfishness in those last 4 or 5 possessions were unreal. I want to say that I drew it up so that Jamani can. I really didn't. You know what I mean? We had options on the floor and things to take advantage of. And I think what you saw is our team believed in him. He obviously believed in himself. And we spoke on the radio show the other day, Doc, just about the time he puts in the gym by himself. And so, you want to see a kid like that be able to make the big plays in the big moments. So credit to Jamani there. We'll need that in the tournament. We're going to need that to make a run if we want to make one. And then obviously LaMarcus, his whole career for us, has just found a way to believe in himself and come up big. And so it was a really fun emotion. When we got that last stop, Jamani actually, believe it or not, was the one that got that stop as well, like a deflection, kind of a block in the post. And just seeing his face be so elated that I did it, like that we did it, like I made the play. And then obviously to win it kind of an intangible play, like you mentioned last night, with LaMarcus diving on the ground to get the ball. And so it was kind of that last little tip of the hat of, this is who we are, we're going to outwork you, this is what we want to be like. And we talk about our DNA. Our DNA is supposed to be blue-collar tough, and that's what it showed. And so, man, I'm kind of getting goosebumps right now, just reliving it, So very, very special for our program, a big moment.
And speaking of big moments, Maurice Coleman had 9 points in the game up until the last 27 seconds, all of them at the free throw line. He only got 1 basket, but it was the basket that got you the lead.
Huge. Our guys, back in our day, Doc, shooting floaters and running jump, that was a normal thing. Well, it's kind of died out of the game a little bit with the bigger forward. It's hard to shoot shots over them like that. And so our guys joke about that in practice. And so Mo can shoot them and Devin can shoot them. Zach Parker's still working on his, so they give him trouble. And so when Mo made that, after May looked at the bench and he got big eyes and they knew what he was saying. So again, one of those moments that it's just crazy how it happens when it happens. You never draw it up like that. You never think it's going to go down like that. And so, again, kind of a hallmark moment. That ball hung in the air for a minute and a half in my mind. You know what I mean? And so, but again, I'm so proud of my kids for having the courage in those moments to make the plays they're capable of making. I played for a coach in football back in the day, and one of his favorite sayings was, when the moment rises, the plays have to rise too. So if you can't rise your level of play to the moment, then you're going to get left behind. And it never was a mean thing, but I think even as young people, he wanted to challenge us to find our ceiling and to keep pushing. And so I think you've seen our ceiling even elevate within the game sometimes, Doc. And so that's a beautiful thing. That means that we're growing and that we're on this right trajectory. And so very proud as a leader of those guys that's where they've trusted me, you know.
Coach, tomorrow night you're playing against WT and a chance to make a signature statement.
Yes, sir. I mean, what a cool moment. You know, so many of our boosters and backers and our people that have come alongside us all year, so in a rivalry game, you know, everything goes out the window. Anything can happen. So you've already got a lot of toss-ups in that way. Then on a new floor, a new arena, my kid for the first time are going to walk in this arena and be blown away. And so, and again, I think West Texas expected to be there, and for a long time has known this was something that was going to happen. With our kids earning it, you know, I think just like a lot of things in life, I think sometimes when you earn things, it's more precious to you. And I'm hoping that as we protect this opportunity, that's how our kids approach it, you know, with a pretty vicious guard and grip on what's hopefully going to be a really special moment for our program.
Coach, congratulations on the success of Greyhound basketball this year, and let's beat those Buffs tomorrow night.
Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you all to everybody. Awesome season on SportsLook. Thank you.
All right, well, that is going to wrap up the interview segment of SportsLook for tonight, so we'll clear this out, and I'll finish up with an overtime right now. Have you ever heard of Gravity, Iowa? Probably not, but I bet you have heard of Gravity, Iowa's most famous son, especially if you live here in New Mexico, a guy by the name of Bob King. Bob King was the head basketball coach at the University of New Mexico from 1962 to 1972. He was the guy that was the head coach when the pit was first opened. And as a matter of fact, the basketball court at the pit is called the Bob King Court. Bob King brought in a lot of great players to the University of New Mexico. Mel Daniels, the most famous of those. But Mel Daniels, not the most famous person that Bob King ever recruited. And you're saying, how could he have recruited anybody more famous than Mel Daniels? Mel Daniels was the two-time MVP back in the American Basketball Association days. You're going to have to wait for that one. I'm going to keep you in suspense. You're going to find out the answer to who was the most famous recruit of Bob King in next week's episode. That's what we call a cliffhanger. Well, that is going to wrap up in overtime, and that will wrap up an episode of SportsLook. I'd like to thank Trace Sigler, the head coach of Greyhound men's basketball, Aubrey Orr from Greyhound softball. I'd like to thank Brooklyn and Dillon for the high school spotlight. Mr. Dijon was my floor director. So for all those aforementioned people, this is Doc Hilder saying, so long.
We're going to start off the game with the tip-off, and Lindsey Blakey.
Here I was so proud of myself. I thought that was such a good story. I told it over time.